It is my great pleasure to introduce Jamie McHugh, a longtime member of ISMETA, the International Somatic Movement Education and Therapy Association. Jamie is founder of Somatic Expression, Body Wisdom for Modern Minds. I approached Jamie in the spring asking if he would share his expertise in ecosomatics for Earth Day, which happened in April. And generously, Jamie created a beautiful thread on ecosomatics in his Meta's member forum on our website, and then generated this fabulous idea of a podcast series. So here we are, episode number 3. Jamie, thank you so very much for being with us. Welcome.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So, here we all are. What's going to happen? One of the interesting things, of course, in any improvisation is the element of chance. And today, one of our guests has not shown up yet. So, that creates a little bit of a swirl. But the first thing I want to invite you to think about, well, first of all, a little announcement. We are going to disable chat for this session, so you can really just settle into being present with yourself and our speakers. At this point, Michael and myself. Secondarily, because one of the things I've noticed in this technological age is that we have our habits of paying attention to the screen. And to reflect our values as somatic movement educators and therapists, I want to invite you to, first of all, make yourself comfortable. And if that means lying down, feel free to lie down, stand up, maybe at times move. Maybe you want to draw or scribble or write while this is going on, so that you are a co-creator in this event and not just a consumer. Because one of our challenges in modernity, because we've all been kind of joined together through the technological trance that we live in our synthetic environments, to consume, to take in, to consume. And so, how do we also participate and co create with our own expression? So, for me, that's really fundamental to reclaiming our soma as a body of life, and how we can then let that trickle out into the larger planet. Because, of course, as we know, that one of the challenges we have with the earth changes right now is that we need to consume less, particularly those of us who live in the Western world. Because all of us on this call, we are all part of the 1%. And we know it's the 1% and the global north which is consuming a very high proportion of resources on the planet. So, just like in somatic practice, how we learn to conserve energy, to align ourselves with gravity, to move with less effort, as well as being able to sum up our energy to meet the demands of life, it's also incumbent upon us to really think about, how do I consume? And how do I create? And how can I begin to shift the balance in terms of my creative potential to find new sources of inspiration, to be able to participate in the commons in a very different way? So for me, part of our world of somatic movement education and therapy is a bit countercultural. Because to be a body in modern culture is an act of resistance and an affirmation of life. And this series has really been dedicated to how can we remember that we are part of this larger body, this larger body of life that needs our stewarding, just like we steward our own individual nature. So, so feel free to get comfortable, to close your eyes at times, to lie down. I mean, and of course, when I was out in the woods this morning, of course, I had to bring this in because I was thinking of this sitting under my tree. And I was coming back out through the woods and I realized, oh, I need to clean out one of my bird houses. And I found this incredible nest. And I thought I'd been thinking about the theme of comfort. And I mean, this bird's nest, oh my goodness. So the natural world is reminding us about being a body, creating environments of softness, of comfort. I mean, the creativity of this nest is unbelievable. The world talks to us. The world talks to us if we're willing to listen. So far, no olive. Okay. So I'm very happy to now introduce Michael Jasmin in Paris, France. And I met Michael last summer when I was overseas teaching my embodying nature workshops. And I was very impressed by what he was doing in the world and his point of view. And he was actually the one who inspired me to do this podcast series. I thought, there's just so many people doing in their own unique way pieces of work that contribute to the whole. And of course, so we know one of the challenges of modern life is we have, thought leaders and YouTube influencers and people doing grand actions. And it can actually, I think, disempower those of us who, in our own unique way, are moving with small, sustained steps. The world needs all of us to take action in our own unique way. So for me, it was important to really invite into these conversations people who are doing interesting, unique work. One, as a way to bring their point of view forward, but also secondarily to stimulate your creativity, your questioning, your dreaming about, what is my unique path and what can I uniquely contribute to the larger world body? And I think of that contribution not being as sacrifice or burden, but something that brings you alive, right? That really brings you alive in this reciprocity, in this dance with action in the world. So, Michael, welcome.
Thank you, Jamie. And I'm very happy, to be with you. I am very moved by your beautiful words. And I feel honored to share this time with you. So, yeah, very happy to be here. And I feel very connected by what you shared with us about participation, co-creation, and on a very simple way to share our personal view on a larger scale to sharing and links are very essential. So yeah, I don't know if you have some question to orient or exchange as you want.
Sure, beautiful. So for me, the theme that I really wanted to focus on was attention. How one of the first acts, the precursor to action,
Mm.
is pausing, sensing, paying attention. And through that paying attention, harnessing the powers of our consciousness to really settle, consider, contemplate, as opposed to getting caught up in the rush of life. And
Mm. Mm.
I know that your work as an archaeologist has really trained you to contemplate and attend to place in a very unique way. So could you begin by like saying a little bit about that, you know, your practice and what that has taught you?
Um, yeah, about my training in archaeology and how it gave me some uh, specific abilities to attention to the land. I will try to sum up like briefly and simply about this training in archaeology. So it was some decades ago. I will say I'm still active in archaeology, but much less than well, more than 20 years ago. And I'm much more involved now in dancing, ecosomatics, and things like that. But I still feel strongly how it gave me a very original way to look at, let's say, at the land. I will say that archaeology, for me, is about a perception and a study of space and time. You know, just these 2 points, like very simple points. And about the land or the space, in fact, it's a multi-layered perception. This is the very first point that it gave me, you know, not just to see something which is flat, but to have a relation, like I think it's very like that, like multi-layered. And about time, in fact, it was a deep time feeling and sensitivity. You know, it's how it evolved and how it gave me a very specific way. Then perhaps to give an example how it works and about this archaeological training. I will not speak about like the theoretical training, yeah, very the one which is into the space and the land. We used to talk in archaeology about surveys. Surveys, it's about, let's say, walking the land. It's walking, traveling. It could be driving also. You know, you are in a region and you have to survey that region. So it can be on a small scale, you know, just spending your time to look at the earth, at your feet, in fact, to try to find small evidence of a small past object or thing like that, or it could be a very attentive looking at the landscape in order to this is the important point. Huh? It's the intention, you know, for sure that you put into that observation of the land. So it's not just looking at the land; it's to try to see all kind of anomalies or cultural things that will give you clues about past human activities. So your intention is, for example, I remember I was in the south of France looking for middle-age mines. It was a region well known for these subterranean activities. And at that time, I don't know, 8 centuries ago, it gave lots of wealth to that region. So the surveys was to try to find new mines. So we were in cars sometime on very small roads, driving very slowly. It could be like 10 kilometers or, you know, 10 miles per hour, so even less. And we are, you know, like scanning the landscape. So we have a precise intention. And in the same way, it's a constant interrelation trying to decipher or to understand the thing as if something was hidden or not yet discovered. And I remember that, you know, in doing that for hours and hours, or by walking and then doing other archaeological activities, it gave me a very specific relation to, let's say, to the land and to the landscape. And what I would like to perhaps to add, you know, it's about the relation to Earth. So it could be like the world, like the globe, about the Earth. But for sure, you know, in archaeology, basically the Earth is the soil. the ground. It could be also the dirt. It means when you excavate something, you will throw everything which is the earth itself, because it's considered as it's not cultural in a way. It's a natural, but you are not basically looking for that. So the relation to the earth, when now looking at that time, I will say that I was spending sometimes months like diving into the earth, because when you are excavating, your hands are into the earth and you are dealing with the earth. And even if you are not on a ecosomatic or ecological approach, it's a very sensuous activity. So, and what is important, it's about like your own relation to the land, to the landscape, like, because the territory is not the map, for sure. And when you are looking at the ground, in fact, what you try to understand, it's what is going on in the underground. So it's very related, to the seen and the unseen. So, so the visual perception, it's the very first sense that is in action. And it's a strong emphasis on that, but it's not the only one. I would say perhaps it starts with that, with that visual interaction. And then there is, when you are excavating, it's a very strong body engagement. And for me now, when I'm looking at that time, when I was in my 20s and excavating for months and months, and especially in the Near East, Middle East, like it's very hot. You wake up at 4 in the morning when it's, with the sunlight, the sunrise. It's something which is very related to, all the atmospheric and, night and day rhythm. So it's something very, in a very natural way of, being in the season. So when we are digging now, for me, it's very much like an archaeological choreography. It's some sort of a dance, for sure. At that time, I was not thinking like that. But now when I'm thinking to that, for sure, we are like very weird way of moving. When you are excavating, for example, we are walking on walls, because, floors, when you have a floor, you have to avoid, to protect it. So you don't walk on floors, you walk on walls, because it's something which is strong and stable. So there is past space. It's like a kind of a weird, forgotten land, something which is, it's another land in a way. And this relation to imagination is, for sure, is very strong. And perhaps
there's so much that you've offered that it just really stimulates a lot of my own thinking in terms of, as you said, kind of going backwards, the movement responses of, in a sense, navigating this environment, the dance of participating in this particular landscape, as well as your attention to place. And as you talk about those archaeological digs, being up at 4 o'clock in the morning, the sunrise, really witnessing the change that's happening and feeling the impact of that on your own body, so that, in a sense, what you're doing as an archaeologist is not just visually based or kind of tuning in and focusing on like a specific goal or intention, but also a very sensuous experience and direct involvement with place.
Yeah, totally, yeah. And I think this, after like the visual perception, then the body engagement on the side, then there is like another strong sensuous relation, with the object. It's something about object or bodies, dead bodies sometimes that you have to excavate. So there is relation, to a deep time, which is very unusual. And when you discover something, it's something with, like, on a sensitive level. It's excitation. It's also discovering something. In a way, for me, it evolved in some sacred geography, or or the analogy between body and earth. Like body is earth, like through what is present for you, like the atmosphere and like the strong body involvement. You are sweating, it's very hot, it's in a way it's not yoga movement, it's kind of a violent, for yourself, but in a way it's part of the game. And so the body is very incorporated or very present into all this stage, in fact.
Well, it's interesting because my guest last time, Nala Walla, had been taking somatic practices from her training into her work on her farm. So, how to be aware of the body, lifting the wheelbarrow, moving things from place to place, chopping wood, digging. So, in a sense, because as you said, it's not yoga, and it can be, with yoga simply meaning union, the union of my body with place, with my activity, and how can I bring that sensibility from training into action as you're talking about it, that very strong action. How do I act and recuperate, right? Move and be still. How do I begin to listen to both inner conditions and outer conditions? I would say, in a way, just to add one more idea to that ecosomatics as an approach really is like the bioregionalism of the body, right? So that in terms of really understanding place, that is what we do in somatic inquiry, really using sensation, imagination, sensory feedback to locate ourselves in ourselves, that in an ecosomatic way, we are also attuning to place and the input of place, the movement of the trees, sky, the feeling of the wind, so that wrapping ourselves in the larger body as a co-creative practice.
Mm. Mm. I remember that about time, and space, something which is very specific with archaeology is a very long time that you spend in a small place. It could be, 2 yards on 2 yards. You can spend a week, 2 weeks, in that same space. So it's something like you are very engaged in a tiny place of the world, and the earth is very present. It's something like very basic in a way, and like all your body is there, and with all around you it's earth all around. It can be several meters deep. It's something which is very very unique and a very strong experience, how you relate and how you are into the earth in a way.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think it's wonderful. Like you said, spending that much time in one place. And that's ideas sometimes that we have to go a lot of different places to experience environments where sometimes the land underneath our own feet, here and now, is the place to land and to pay attention to. I know years ago, my godson asked me, he says, well, are you ever going to get tired of photographing at Sea Ranch? Don't you want to go to other environments? And I was like, well, if I show up each day to the same place, the tide is different, the light is different, the conditions are different, that the rapidly moving planet is constantly changing the conditions, and that arriving in place and feeling it through many different changes is a very rich relationship, which it sounds like also the closed score, I have to stay in this place for so long, creates a focus and an ability to drop down more and more into place.
It's I totally agree. It's a practice that shared and proposed to people in I used to do like a workshop of deep ecology and things like that. And, you know, from the eight shields approach, you know, it's as a side spot. And the side spot is like at the very morning when you wake up, you go directly, you know, in nature, like very close by where you are living, and you sit for, you know, it could be 20 minutes just doing nothing. And it's not to have a view on a large scale, you know, it can be at 10 centimeters, you know, from a flower, or like in the middle of the grass, but like every day, every season at the same place. And by not moving for some time, you know, like animals used to come by close to you, and you see how nature is evolving day by day, month by month, and season by season, and how everything is changing. You know, you are more precise, you know, by coming back to that same place every day. And it's yeah, it's something, it gives a lot, you know. There is you go deeper, you know, into yourself and into your knowledge, you know, of that side spot place.
Right. And I think it's kind of a wonderful practice in its own right, is like find your place.
Mm.
Find your place that you can return to over and over. I have a
Mm.
specific tree on my land where I sit there, and that's all I have to do is just sit, arrive, be held, lean into the tree. Sometimes eyes closed, sometimes eyes open, but just knowing that each time I'm down there, something will reveal itself, something will emerge. Even if that emergence is simply just, ah, I feel good in my own skin. That is enough, but that the tree, my relationship with that tree, really allows me to experience that environment in such a precious way, right?
Mm.
It's so we don't have to go far to have a relationship with the planet. And
Mm.
so I'm curious because you mentioned deep ecology. So I'm wondering if you could say a little bit more about your involvement with Joanna Macy's work, and maybe say a little bit about what Joanna Macy's work is for people here who might be unfamiliar with what she's doing.
Mm. Yeah, so Joanna Macy is from the US, still living on the West Coast. She must be now 94, 95 years old, still active. She's a very engaged person into political matters, you know, about nuclear question, feminism, and then also deep ecology. And one of her book, you know, one of very well known is Coming Back to Life. And in fact, it presents her process that she called the work that reconnects. And that process, so I've been experienced it, and I've been formed, you know, to organize workshop in order to transfer it and to experience it with other people. And that process for me is something which is very, very organic, very clever. It could be from 2 to 6 days, or it could be even longer. And it's very much about emotion, about, you know, talking and sharing. And it's very much about like the ecological crisis, and how on a personal level, but more on a common level, you know, how we can be empowered and change things into our life together and on larger level. And for me, I would say that process is very much about like what we used to call like the triple links, you know, the link to ourselves, the link to the others, and the link to nature. So there are, you know, it's a very famous way, you know, to proceed, or to define that. Uh, so when I discovered her work and that process, it affected me a lot. And I will say that for me, that the primary connection will be what is called like a deep time. In deep ecology, you can have that deep time concept or idea. And I will say there are some practices or rituals, it could be named like that, where when you can experience, some connection with ancestors. So it could be like with Earth, something like that. But let's say deep time experience, it's yeah, that kind of connection with ancestors. And for me, when I went through that, it gave me like an answer, like, okay, now I understand and give some answers to why I started to do archaeology more than 20 years ago. It was like a way to go back, when I was in my 20s and starting to do archaeology. So I will say that deep time is a sensitive connection, to the earth, to the land, to life, to trees, and it goes through our body. So for me, it's like it's one of the connection, between my previous practice and my more deep ecology engagement, especially through that work that reconnects.
Hmm. So this feels like a lovely moment, thinking of deep time and space, just to take an easy pause. So I invite all of us just to settle into our own skin for a moment, to let all of this wonderful, rich words just kind of settle as we take a few breaths. So I want to offer a poem by William Stafford that came to me last night, and it seems so perfect for our time together. And of course, for me, art and thinking in other categories is important for the fullness of our experience. This is called Being a Person. Be a person here. Stand by the river. Invoke the owls. Invoke winter, then spring. Let any season that wants to come here make its own call. After that sound goes away, wait. A slow bubble rises through the earth and begins to include sky, stars, all space, even the outracing, expanding thought. Come back and hear the little sound again. Suddenly, this dream you are having matches everyone's dream, and the result is the world. If a different call came, there wouldn't be any world, or you, or the river, or the owls calling. Suddenly, this dream you are having matches everyone's dream, and the result is the world. How you stand here is important. How you listen for the next things to happen. How you breathe. So for me, the richness of that language in that poem kind of brings us back to that remembrance over and over again. Our breath is a way to bring us back, the rich evocation of the natural world, of the beautiful way that thought can spin a cocoon of images and experience in us. And in this conversation with you, I've really found myself kind of really thinking about time and space, and like you said, that really being in a small space. And the last question I want to ask of you is there's another aspect of your participation in the world, which is being involved with Extinction Rebellion. So to kind of move from the very personal and just right here to that broader reach of your work in the world. And I was wondering if you could say something about that.
Yes, sure. Um, I would say that this engagement, with Extinction Rebellion in Paris, um took shape, like in street occupation or different ways. For me, it's a level of political engagement that goes uh, together with deep ecology, also involvement. And it's important for because it set your body presence in relation to space, but also, to powers, to institutions, to state power, or in the political arena. So it moves you, from your sometimes somatic practice or engagement, with just other people, like let's say on another level and with other intention. And it's also a way like to test, empowerment, capacities and the reality, when you are in confrontation with political struggle. So it's all this, expansion of awareness and engagement. And on a scale, of a political action, we could talk of nano-political actions, like to sort your, things on a daily basis, plastic and food and things like that. It's a nano-political effects. It could be also like micro-political effects. For example, like dance. You dance with other people, and by engaging, it's also there is a political reason and effect it can have. And then there is a political basic level, which is, I think, the extension rebellion of being like with more numerous people. And then there is like macro political effects, but it's on your individual level. I think it's very difficult to be concerned with that. It's state and international decision levels. So for me, that level of Extinction Rebellion, it's a way to be connected to some other body experience, and also it helps me to I will say to situate myself, on a more daily urban life and interrelation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's, many, as I'm listening to you, many levels of participation. First, even, like you were saying, just even being aware of space and yourself in space with others as a collective, testing your capacity and your strength to be a unified voice in terms of demanding action, response, and the choreography of the street action, and that how that can be inclusive and welcoming. Very often our political demonstrations can be off-putting for people or scare people because of the level of you know anger that is expressed, and of course, in considering these larger choreographies of street protest, how can we invite in different qualities of participation, mindfulness, somatic agency. So, I think that there's an evolution that hopefully can happen in how this theater in the streets can become also another venue and
Mm.
another way for people to take action, just simply to join up and be part of, with their bodies, with their embodied presence, to be part of a movement. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Hmm. So I'm aware that we are at like a quarter to the hour, and Elizabeth, if you wish, could you open up the chat again? So if people want to contribute things that way, or if people would like to ask a question or respond, let's open it up.
I may see Olive as well
Oh,
in the room. Would you like me to?
oh, please come on in, Olive. Hi.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Hello, Liv.
I am so incredibly sorry that I am this late. I am here. I am a little yes. So,
Your sound, something's weird with your sound.
yeah.
I can't really hear.
Can you hear me if I speak closely? I've had somebody else. Oops. Is this happening or not? No, it doesn't make any difference. I'm going to just get some help with someone who's, I want to be seen.
Okay.
So give me 1 second and I'll be right with you.
The chat is now open. If people would like to post comments or questions.
My microphone sound is not great. I don't know why that is. Should I just take the headphones off and just use the microphone in it?
Or if anybody would like to speak up, feel free to. May we hear the poem again at our closing? Sure, I'd love to do that. Anybody who'd like to offer something, a response, a question, a curiosity? So while you all are contemplating that, I have an invitation. Because part of this series is really to, like I said, inspire action. So what is the one action you can take this week to affirm your connection to the planet? What's one action you can take this week to affirm your connection to the planet? And that may just simply be doing something that you often don't do. It's like, oh, I usually kind of walk someplace, and I'm going to find like a place where I'm just going to sit and kind of, like Michael suggested, just be still and wait for the environment to unfold around me. Right? I'm going to lay down on the earth. I am going to, whatever speaks to your imagination and creativity. And then the other proposal is, what is one action you can take this week to support the life of the planet? So in the last episode, I had talked about, there's many ways to be proactive and support the life of the planet. And one things I've done in the past is, like for my 65th birthday 4 years ago, I did a fundraiser for the Sunrise Movement, the group of young environmental activists, and just had people come together from my community to perform, and all the proceeds went to the Sunrise Movement. And the young people were very grateful that these older people would show up for them and support them. So it was as much that there was the money involved, but it was also just that we were showing up, that we had their backs, I think that was very significant. So that, of course, got me thinking again. It's like, oh, okay, so this year I want to do a benefit for the Land Institute, which is an incredible organization in Kansas, of all places. But they are working with uh, creating perennial grains. And those of you who know anything about farming is that most of the grains we eat are annual, and that of course they have to dig up the soil each time and plant, etc., etc. So the development of perennial grains, grains that will produce one plant that will keep producing year after year, is these plants have very deep roots so that they're drought resistant, or drought resilient, I should say. And that because you're not digging up the land all the time, it allows the living matrix of the soil to regenerate itself. Uh, so that, they've been working on this for years, and I just thought, oh, okay, I really like what these folks are doing. So this year I'm just going to do a hour and 15-minute deep dive class and have the money that comes to that to go directly to the Land Institute. So I think that's what I want to keep coming back to over and over again. It's really simple. It's just where we put our attention and consider these questions and then find action. Because as the great activist and writer Edward Abbey said, sentiment without action is the ruin of the soul. And I think that that is so beautiful and succinct, that we can have lots of sentiment and feelings about what's going on, but unless we put our values, our feelings into action, right, that it's just a transient experience. So how do we get behind and embody our values? And I see that. Oh, thank you, Laura. She says, thank you for that question. I've been looking from far, a place on the corner of an island in the center of the city, and I've been thinking, why don't I go there to sit and just absorb the water? I will do it. And she's regularly supporting Tree Sisters to plant trees. Beautiful. Yeah, the organization Tree Sisters. So,
Olive may be ready to come back. I'm not sure. But Olive, I can't spotlight you unless you there you go. Bring your video back on. Let's give it a try and see.
hello. There's still no voice from you.
No, we can't hear you now. I see your lips moving, but I don't hear any sound. Okay.
A moment of dance.
You could have a movement conversation, a nonverbal exchange.
Well, since Olive is here in person, Michael, would you like to, because you had started this conversation telling us how it was your work with Olive that kind of got you going in this. So could you take us there? Give us an example of what you did on the land that was through movement explorations that inspired you.
Yes, I remember, at that time I was living in New York, and when it was, well, at that time it was in 2004 until 2007, and I went to DTW, so Dance Theater Workshop in New York. It's a place with like lots of spectacle and things like that. And I was waiting for someone outside, and there was a screen, and on the screen, two people, were dancing, moving like weird kind of movement without music in weird place. I was like, what's that? I never saw something like that. What are they doing? And it was body cartography. It's like the group, it was Olive. And I thought, wow, this is like wonderful. It inspired me. So I went, on the internet, and then I saw that they will give a couple of months later, a workshop in France, in south of France. And at that time, I knew that I will be in France for some time before returning back to New York. So I registered and I discovered with Olive, so it was in 2007, I think June 2007, I discovered Contacting Pro into nature. And since then, I felt in love, with that kind of approach, with her work, like her kind of presence. And it was very interesting because she did not ask me anything about like the kind of place where we went to dance every day. And it was close to a river, but a day it was also in a Middle Age castle. So it was not about just culture, nature. It was also like cultural place and that kind of interaction at many levels. And so since then, I've been always dancing. I love to dance, but it was with music and with her. It was a Contacting Pro, but that with that very strong interaction with nature. For me, that was like it was a very difference. It was not just. It could be, in a white studio, and it's great too. But what she proposed in 2007, it was very like to dive into nature and just improv. You improvise. So it was like a great experience. Like it was a very genesiac time for me.
That's beautiful. I love that. I hope you received all that, Olive. It's such a great story, and I was just imagining you in the land and in place, and the kind of combination of the two, like you said, culture and nature, and that place where they meet through the body and our participation. It's lovely.
Thank you. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yay! Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm really so sorry, everybody. And really to Michael and to Jamie, I'm deeply sorry. I'm here on my phone now and I plugged my headphones in. So I'm plugged into the wall. So I'm here and I can talk. So,
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I took your breathing invitation and your pause very fully a moment ago. So
nice. So I'm very aware that it's 2 minutes to the hour, and so it is. So we're going to kind of shift into half hour of overtime and Q&A, and people who want to stay and converse, and of course I'd like to kind of hand the platform over to Olive then, so she can talk about her work and in relationship to your input. And I had a request to read that poem one more time, so that feels like a really good way for us to roundabout close the hour. So once again, William Stafford, Being a Person. Be a person here. Stand by the river. Invoke the owls. Invoke winter, then spring. Let any season that wants to come here make its own call. After that sound goes away, wait. A slow bubble rises through the earth and begins to include sky, stars, all space, even the outracing, expanding thought. Come back and hear the little sound again. Suddenly, this dream you are having matches everyone's dream, and the result is the world. If a different call came, there wouldn't be any world, or you, or the river, or the owls calling. How you stand here is important. How you listen for the next things to happen. How you breathe. So thank you all for coming. And please, if you have, just down the road, if you have any thoughts or input as this series continues, please drop me an email. Just let me know your thoughts, responses, because this is a co-creative, evolving process that for me what's important is that it has soul, that it's relevant, practical, and supports you in your own journey being a co-creator with the earth. So thank you all for coming, and now we are going to take a moment, those people who need to leave at the top of the hour, to go ahead and make that change. And we'll go into overtime with Olive and the rest of you. Taking a minute, including Olive. Oh, lovely. So just reading some of the chat. Manda Johnson, taking a somatic walk with my grandchildren next week, including elements of ecosomatics in a course I'm facilitating for Pachamama Alliance in February and March. Beautiful. What is the link to join the next sessions? It's on the Ismedo website. Are you still here, Elizabeth? Yes, you are.
I am. I will put that in the chat.
You'll put that in the chat. Thank you. We have to go. I wish we could have heard how. Beautiful. Bye, Adriana and Roger. You have to go to a meeting in 15 minutes for Michael. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good. So, because this is our opportunity to converse, why don't we start with Olive, anything that you would like to, in this moment, bring forward in terms of some of the questions about, your experience as a practitioner of body-mind centering, and of course the journeys and excursions through the interior of ourself, and your work in the environment, particularly with facing extinction, kind of arriving on land, and your sensitivity to place and that inner and outer dialogue. So I'm bringing a large field to the moment, and so anything that strikes you to jump in. And we can't hear you.
You need to unmute, please.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Even better. Thank you.
Yep.
You can see I'm like blind on my phone with you. Here we are, and I'm hand holding my phone. So it's an incredible, like it's a huge question, and I think that the really small big piece that I want to start with is just my own sense of I think like heartbreak and grieving, and that is sort of unfolding in these, I don't know, in this past period of time. And I the past month, the past 5 weeks, the past 6 weeks, the past, I don't know, I'm just deeply in it right now. And I think as we come into this holiday season, and I live in Oslo in Norway, so also this feeling of what culturally is sort of unfolding around me, and how the mismatch or the kind of just even arriving in solstice, like I have a massive disorientation, which is sort of partially, I think, why I even missed the beginning of tonight. Like I don't exactly know what's happening, and something is happening inside of me. So I just I think that I enter the somatic work is so important for me as a way of kind of grounding and orienting to the present, and also orienting to the minutia in a way. And then I've been very much in these past days, like I've been in video editing land and orienting towards like organizational needs that have been required of me outside of my practice, actually. And I just noticed that I haven't been I'm sort of in a, it's such a, I mean, it's such a sort of a great point of entry. Like I teach the body mind centering work, and I work with clients, and I make artwork as a dance practitioner. So I really deeply lean into the somatic work as a kind of language, as a lens, as a way in which I create this kind of educational ground for people through my artwork, but also through my teaching and through my hands-on work. So it's super, it becomes everything in terms of this way of orienting. And so I think that the depth and sort of the opportunities and the richness that exist in these sort of transformed ways of perceiving our own movement on the planet in this time, but also the movement of the earth and the movement of the water and the movement of all of these other bacteria and beings and life forms, and the movement of others around us, like all of these different kind of elements that we are moving through, that this orientation through the systems of my own body just open out into all these systems that you know, that are within the ecosystem and the environments in which I'm living. So so this sort of this dissolving, I mean, I think already, right, when we're working, we're looking at senses and perception, we're understanding how we perceive as beings on the planet, that this is already like a multiple kind of looping Mobius strip, this inner outer dissolving that happens, and that we can go into the specificity and the minutia of our own body, but that actually opens universes inside us, but it's also opening us to these universes outside of us, right? And into these kind of extended relational fields, be they with other elements or with other beings. So maybe that's enough of an answer to that question. I'm landing through the woods, so just thank you for writing with me. Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah,
I'd like to come back, if it's okay with you, to where you started from in terms of the grief. You pinpoint or speak to that, just to bring that element into our conversation, which of course is so important.
Yeah. So as yeah, I don't even know where I want to start, because it's entering in from so many different places, and I can actually just say if I was to go in a very grounded way, and to not talk about the whole planet, and to not talk about every war that's happening, and to not talk about being Jewish, and to not talk about being a migrant living in a culture where I don't speak language. Like, there's so many layers to this conversation. But I could say that I've been editing this video footage of a project called Resisting Extinction. And I've been editing this video footage into a trailer. And I absolutely struggle with that process of taking something that's deeply durational and deeply local to different ecosystems and deeply material with such integrity to the people who have delivered the work, and turning it into this other thing. But I'm also been in these repeated sort of somatic storytelling experiences with all these different artists that I've been working with over the past 3 years, how touching that is. And then all of a sudden I'm in a spider web or I'm inside the mosque, like I'm in this sort of zoom in like experience. So it's like I haven't been out. We've had incredible snow today, like tons and tons of snow here. So I haven't been outside in the elements. I've been deep in this kind of space of the artistic practice of the work, but through the lens of the camera, through the lens of the eye. And I could talk about that for a very long time, but there's something even about that process that is both empowering, but it is also, for me, really challenging to exist within, for example, the marketplace of the production world of the arts and what that requires of me. So I think just the reality of being sort of locked into a seat, like on a very personal and grounded level, of being at a desk and locked into a seat for days on end inside of this material is a big like paradox in a way,
Sure. Sure.
and so there's that is happening on top of my inability to also take action around other things that I would like to be out in the world, engaged with others in a way, collectively with other people. But I think this holding, so within Resisting Extinction, we're really opening up spaces for our audiences to for us as performers, and hopefully also for us as our audiences to metabolize the feelings that they have right now about the climate crisis, about mass extinction, about what it means to be a human at this moment on the planet. So there's a lot of content that is very like kind of powerful, but also it can be very difficult to kind of either to sit with it or to resolve it in some way, or to hold it within the frame of the performance in a way that's successful, or to kind of be able to close it at the end of a performance, either for the audience or for yourself. So there's a kind of a rawness, I think, in a lot of the material, the questions that get asked and the material that gets exposed within that work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I'm sitting with a lot of that right now.
Yeah.
And
I'm aware of that dynamic tension, as you were talking about, between the rich, palpable, full experience of the work and the need for kind of a reductionist effort to put it into a trailer, which is a visual piece. And in that dynamic tension, how do you find a way to really communicate the depth of experience that you're offering? And so, because people here might not be aware of your piece Facing Extinction, and I was very taken by your description of it before when we talked about it. So if you could give kind of an overview of what is this experience, and how are you, how do you work with, like, for example, a community that you go to and then invite witnesses or audience members? So say a bit about that. I think it'd be very helpful.
Yeah. So Resisting Extinction is a work that is really attempting to share practices for how to live on a damaged earth. And it's a dance work. And we developed it in Oslo, so in the forest next to the fjords here, kind of in the middle of the city. And the work unfolds in 3 parts. The first part is called a weather walk, where we take someone for a walk. And maybe we begin with the small talk about the weather to really then kind of touch into talking about the climate crisis. But it's dialectical, so we move between movement and language all the time. We're kind of taking someone for a sensory adventure through the landscape, and in the process of taking them physically for a journey, we're also doing it with language and kind of opening up spaces in each other's imaginations in a way to ask these questions and to try and create a space for people to feel what they feel maybe express it, maybe metabolize it. So this is the kind of one-on-one, half hour, 45-minute long event called a weather walk. And then this is followed by a second section of the piece called the missing. And the missing is more of a kind of deep time. We set up a part of the landscape and we give like a kind of deep time introduction to who was here, what other beings were living here 10,000 years ago, or 1,000 years ago, or 100 years ago, or who's still living here, who is missing, who, so sort of opening up the questions of the endangered and extinct beings who may or may not be present in this particular landscape. And the audience is invited to walk on their own for about half an hour. And sometimes they sit and meditate, take a nap. Sometimes they really go everywhere and explore everything. We as movers are working in the landscape, embodying in a non-representational way different extinct or endangered beings, and allowing our bodies in a way to be kind of available to whatever comes through us on some level. And I know Otto, who I collaborate with, Otto Ramstad, always likes to say it's also about what, in some ways, within our own behavior as humans, what's also becoming endangered within our own physical capacities. What are we also losing? So how can we give space actually to everything that we can be as bodies, as movers, as people? So then the third section of the work, the audience gathers back together. We collect everybody and we have a conversation about how today we would like to practice dying and decomposing. And each of these dying and decomposing practices are in relationship to different climate scenarios. So for example, if the Gulf Stream stops flowing, stops moving, and it gets colder and colder here in Norway, and actually we've run out of firewood and we've gone out to try and find some more firewood, but we don't realize how cold it actually is, and we never make it back to our house. So we end up freezing to death. So the audience gets to choose a way that they would like to practice dying collectively. And I really, take the form of a somatization to lead people through a biological, physiological process of what would happen to their bodies, what would happen to our bodies collectively if we were to die of freezing in this specific example. And then what would happen as our bodies decompose, and how do our bodies begin to become distributed into the system, into the earth, into the birds, into the bears, who else is here, the worms, right, the flies, who else is here that is going to begin to kind of help us transform. So and then we sing for the audience. So this is like a 2-hour long work, and we've been we developed it in Norway, but we've brought it to New Zealand, to Aotearoa, which is where I grew up. And we have also performed the work in Estonia, in Tallinn, and also in Sweden. And we are, as we tour the work, we have a kind of ecological touring model where we bring, I come and work with local artists. And so we work kind of half or 2/3 local artists, and then a small group of us tours from Norway. So this is resisting extinction right now, and the practice of really, I just say one thing, Michael, just really like arriving at this place for some people during the dying and decomposing, where they feel the resisting extinction being something they perceive on a cellular level in their bodies. So really this question of what is it also to come closer to dying and decomposing as something that is inevitable for all of us, but outside of the cultural frame of human beings, right? So this is kind of like how animals die and decompose. the narrative in a way.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. I was
Thank
as I
you.
was listening to you recounting the piece, I was aware of a piece I saw this year that Peter Sellers created on video uh, called "The Body Is Impermanent," and it was working with working with the Buddhist sutra that recounts, all the processes that are happening with the body as it decays.
Mm.
And part of it for me was just unbearable
Yeah.
because it just kept going and going and going. And at the same time, I realized the power of that is that that I stayed with that focus that we often don't really consider, and the power of that. And little by little, at the end of his film, the man who was he had three artists, a singer, a visual artist, and a dancer. And at the very end, you see this dancer's body superimposed upon a waterfall, and he gradually and gradually just disappears into the earth. And so there was something that was grueling about it, something that was beautiful, something that was tragic. I mean, all of that. And I imagine your piece, and this is partly what I'm curious about, is you are proposing, and I don't know if people who show up for the performance kind of know this is what they're getting into, and that in that performance, holding the space for the provocations, and just as I'm curious about that interface between the strength of what you're offering and how people hold that, respond to it, kind of what they're left with. Michael raised his hand very quickly.
Yes. I have to leave. Thank you again, for your invitation. Olive, it was wonderful to listen to you. I would love to continue this exchange with both of you, and so thank you for sharing that. It's a beautiful project.
Thank you very much, and I'm very sorry to have missed your earlier talking. I look forward to listening to the recording and getting in touch.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Ma. Okay, au revoir.
Au revoir. Goodbye.
I think for sure, it's not like hundreds of people are coming to see the work. The work is for very, intimate audiences of not more than 25, 30 people at a time. And I think people see the title and potentially read the description, but for sure, some people don't know anything and they show up. But they have to make a bit of an effort to get there because it's not in the theater in the city, right? So there's already a process of a kind of gateway, and maybe this is an ethical question, maybe it's questions of consent. Like on some level, they've booked a ticket and they've followed these very specific directions and they've found us in this specific part of the forest. And it maybe took them 45 or 50 minutes maybe to get there, depending on where the event is. So I do feel like, and because the work is in that order also, that there's a kind of orienting and an opening that happens and a grounding and a landing that happens in the weather walk that has also some mild disorientation in it, but it's with another person who is also really attending to you and listening to you, right? So then the second section is like open and you're a free agent to do what you want in some ways. You could wander off. It's more like an installation, right? Like it's really, you could wander off, you could be present, you could, and then the third section, people are also informed. They have a choice as to whether they want to participate or not. And together as a group, we decide what we're going to practice. And so it's very interesting to have this exchange around what's terrifying and actually where people's curiosity is and whether people want to move to what's terrifying or they want to be with their curiosity or they're not interested in doing any of the proposals. And for sure, 99% of people want to try, and we go and lie down in a certain part of the forest or on the beach and practice together, and people are, I think, mostly just super curious. And I think some people are like, I think the reality is it's quite beautiful and it's quite gruesome and it's quite horrific, and it is also asking quite a lot of people to stay with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a kind of attending that I do as the host or the guide of that process, and there's an attending that each of us who has taken somebody for a weather walk earlier in the walk also then comes at the end of the piece to connect with people who have been through the dying and decomposing practice to see if they're okay, and to kind of check in and be with them at the end, right? So a kind of cycling back to the beginning before they leave.
Mm-hmm.
And for sure, some people come undone. But I often feel like the people that come really undone are the people that are up for coming really undone. Like, I know who they are, those people, and I know their backgrounds. And I know also, that some people are not able to relax, and some people fall asleep. And some people have to get up and change positions a lot through, so there's all these different responses that happen. And I think a lot of people are just quite either excited, a little bit scared and anxious, and then quite deeply moved. And then feel actually, like I guess one would do doing any kind of death meditation practice, maybe less fear about that proposal if they had to do it again. So they've also passed through some kind of threshold collectively, or we have passed through some kind of threshold collectively that feels important, so that the question of death becomes less of the thing that we're scared of, so that we can actually get closer to this question of extinction, or so that we can actually get closer to what our collective, agency, capacity, what do we want to do here together in this moment? How are we going to come together collectively, actually? So it's like I talk about this, and it's like it comes back to also for me, like early childhood and being like an anti-nuclear activist at the age of 11 or 12, like all of this earlier activism somehow is like there in this moment inside of this work, and this kind of struggle, I think, to on the one hand be able to not be able to hold like the kind of the scale of what's happening on some level, but being able to ground ourselves in the dirt and in the water and in the moss and in the spiders and with the trees and with each other through our touch and through tasting the leaves, and like to really be in the minutia and in the vastness of the sky, like to be able to do that together and to practice those things together feels like one way of surviving, and one way of loving life, and one way of being in love with each other, and why we want to be here.
It's beautifully said. Well, I mean, as you're talking, and I'm imagining it's one that you are guiding a very important ritual or initiation into this consideration, but that you're also doing it in the web of life. It would be very different, for example, if you did it in a black box theater. Right?
Yeah.
The fact that you were out on the
Yeah.
land and participating, that really modulates, for example, perhaps that fear of decomposing, to see yourself reflected in that tree, for example, that is gradually coming apart or whatever. So, yeah, I just think it's a brilliant ritual, and I applaud you for it because it's, it's not the most comfortable
Yeah.
entertainment, but it is the substance of how our art can really open up other ways of perceiving ourselves and, like you say, dealing with the emotions that arise when resisting extinction. It's funny that I called the piece "facing extinction," resisting it, but
okay.
but
It's okay.
but that's implicit in it is that the resistance to this process that can feel "quote unquote" inevitable, uh, but maybe not, and that is where magic can happen.
Mm.
I'm aware that we could keep conversing, but I'm also really want to acknowledge our host, Elizabeth and Ismeta, for holding this space for us. And I really appreciate our time together. And let me put very quickly in the chat a way that you can contact. Oops. No, to everyone. How you can contact Olive, how you can contact Michael,
Mm.
and if how you can contact me if you want to drop me a note about the series, or as I said, that all of this is an ongoing process, so I appreciate your input. And once again, I very much want to thank Ismeta for hosting this event and for Elizabeth having the vision to get this going. And I really hope that our community can continue to reach out into the larger world and interface with people in different disciplines as we collectively find ways that our action can be magnified and be the change we want to see in the world. So, Elizabeth, anything you want to say to close things out?
A bow of gratitude. Thank you, Jamie, for showing up so consistently in this space and making such a generous offering to the extended community of somatic movement educators, therapists, artists. This is crucial material, and I appreciate how artfully you're bringing these conversations forward. And thank you to Michael and thank you to Olive for being an important part of the process here in episode 3.
And everybody that showed up, thank you for your benevolent
Absolutely.
attention and your co-creative responses. Yes, thank you.
Thank you all. Mm.